Okay, so today we are going to discuss episode 5. dear. So yes, episode 4 obviously has seen Ginny Lemon go home. It's what's inevitable. Obviously that is not, it's not. I personally agree with. I think Ginny Lemon was probably certainly one of the most interesting, possibly the most interesting of the queens in the competition. But the way that this competition works, we all know, it is what it is. They are looking for a very, very particular type of drag queen to win it, and what they do is they will pad the cast out with certain performers who very clearly do not fit that model, and therefore they cannot possibly win the competition, but they're there as to be the also-rans. They make it much more interesting, because it would be incredibly boring if all of them were kind of the same. They were the kind of queen that's going to win it. But ultimately it is a competition. They lose one every time, so eventually they have to start whittling out those ones to get down to the ones who could potentially win. It's very unfair, and ultimately it doesn't make for good television, because it means that by the end you're just kind of bored. But hey, the earlier episodes are always so much more interesting. But that's the way it's done. And yeah, Ginny Lemon was a fantastic performer. But they were always like themselves, and therefore they could not win the competition, because you could tell. I mean, clearly Ginny Lemon was not the kind of person to mould herself into that kind of performer. To win the competition, and therefore cannot win the competition, and therefore is just there to make the earlier episodes more interesting, which they did. So, did what they set out to do. And yeah, once we get to this stage, obviously we're getting to the stage of the competition where, they're gonna shed the also-rans now. So you can tell. Dear Coffee, it's a sister. People like you. Yeah, we're looking at you. People who aren't necessarily, they don't necessarily fit the mould. They're not necessarily one of those look queens, which is a necessary condition for winning. So they more do their own thing, and I really like it, and I actually much prefer that to look queens anyway. But there you go. That's not the criteria for winning the competition. So they'll be going. And I'm not just saying that because I've looked up the elimination order, because no, because I haven't actually. I only looked it up for the first few episodes. I just happened to see it, and then I was like, okay, I'm not going to watch this anymore because I don't want to know. We'll see what happens. But anyway, but yes, I did for the first 4 episodes. Oh no, 5 actually, because yeah, I knew this one as well. But yeah, so before going on to episode 5, I watched the Queens in Lockdown special, which is also on BBC iPlayer. So yeah, I watched the Queens in Lockdown special. That was quite moving, actually. It was quite sad seeing, the trials and tribulations, but just seeing them as just, normal people who were going through a hard time, which everybody was, in lockdown. It was like, yeah, we all feel it. It was really sad seeing Veronica, because obviously knowing that, at the end of all this, yeah, you're not even coming back to the competition, are you? Because, but yeah, I think we could all identify with that. Apparently went through sort of depression, just not leaving the bedroom, and I think we all went through a bit of that in lockdown at times, of sort of like, oh, I just can't be bothered anymore. What's the bloody point? Can't go anywhere. Can't see my friends. Nothing to do. Oh, can't be bothered. I'm just gonna hide in my bedroom. And unfortunately, I have a very large garden here, so I mean, I haven't basically left the house. I went to the post office once in was it September? And then I went for a picnic with my parents later in September, and I went to dinner at a friend's house in October. There are 3 occasions I've left the house in a year. But I have a large garden, so it doesn't matter. I'll still go outside. But yeah, that was quite, you know, your heart went out seeing, oh, you poor thing, and hearing all about Ellie Diamond's troubles, so their family was made homeless because they ran out of money and they had to find somewhere to squat. You go, oh, poor sods. I must say, I don't know what happened in this scene. They were going on about how, oh, the English queens were lucky because in June everything opened up again for a while, but the Scottish queens still couldn't perform because nothing in Scotland opened. But hang on, I live in England. That didn't happen. Well, obviously it did somewhere. I wasn't here. I love the house. All summer, so I don't. No, I was busy gardening. But I spend most of my time at my local theatre, and that has been closed for a year, so yeah, so I've had nowhere to go. And no, it will soon be the anniversary of the last time I saw my friends, because it will be the anniversary of my birthday party, which last time I saw. But hey, unfortunately I'm an unsociable git, so but yeah, so that was quite sad. One thing I was slightly confused about watching that programme, and it got explained when I saw it, but I was bloody annoyed about that, which is what I'm going to get on to. But the way they did the programme, obviously, if you haven't seen it, they kind of intercut sort of video diaries which the queens did in their own home or when they were at work or whatever. So they were kind of like, you know, like video diary vlog style pieces. They intercut that with interviews done as their, you know, confessional self, so to speak. So clearly they must have recorded all of those when they got back for filming after lockdown. I'm thinking, because, okay, so then they get them back into the studio, they get them back into that, you know, put that same outfit on, blah, 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 so they're back in their confessional looks, which they tried to sort of match to the way they'd done them before, as they do. So, yeah, clips from those confessional interviews, which I presume sort of you know, what they still had spare after they'd kind of cut the actual episodes of the series, they were included in it for the queens that were later in the competition, obviously. So ones like I don't know, you know, Cena and Gilliam, whatever, were obviously not included in the confessional bits because they weren't there. But Cherry Valentine was. There were quite a few bits of Cherry Valentine in the confessional. We're talking about the pandemic, and that really confused me because I thought, when did they record? They kind of recorded it before they left because she's talking about the pandemic. Because I was thinking, oh well, maybe because she worked as a nurse. Did you know more? Did they know more about it? I was like, no, they can't have done because they're closeted away whilst they're filming, so they can't have done. Like, what? So they went back to the studio to film? What? I'm confused. So yeah, that was a bit weird. And then it ended when, obviously they got the call back, oh, they're going back. And then of course we had about an Veronica's tested positive for COVID, so can't go back. Oh, that's sad. I mean, I knew that would happen, but it was sad. So yeah, so then obviously went on and watched episode 5. That obviously starts off with that announcement, which we have seen way too often, and then the cameras cut, and then we got a little clips which were also in the Queens of Lockdown. That was kind of like skip through that, and then we came back, and it was 7 months later. I mean, it was a long time. So yeah, so the Queens all come back, and it was a slightly weird moment where they sort of had them all walk into the workroom again, but in their normal clothes, clutching a suitcase, which is a bit weird. was like, why are they? I thought they took like 6 suitcases or something. Why have they only got one now? I don't. But yes, in all our remaining ones come, obviously minus Veronica. So they're a bit confused when they then, yeah, off you go. Oh, hang on, there's still one missing. So they then, obviously they get told that, well, Veronica's tested positive or whatever, so can't come back. Now, as I say, I knew about this beforehand. I'd seen, I think, about the first 5 episodes, so it said that, okay, Veronica couldn't come back because of testing positive. So, Joe Black came back and then immediately gets eliminated. Okay, well, fine, whatever. So, knowing this in advance, when I'd seen that was what was going to happen, I assumed, so I think it's quite a reasonable assumption to make, that, okay, so they won Queen now, so they needed a replacement to make the numbers work with the episodes, so they picked the one who was eliminated first, on the grounds that, for all fairness sake, they were the one that had the least opportunity to like showcase what they could do. So also from the point of view of just like the audience interest, you know, that's the one we've seen least of, so we get them back. So I thought, yeah, okay, that's perfectly reasonable and that makes sense. Fine. So I was honestly shocked when, okay, we have this rather silly moment with a load of animal mascots come in, pretending to be the RuPaul crew, but like with dressed as animals. Okay, where is this going? Then they take the heads off and, oh, it's Cherry Valentine, and Asina Mandela. What? I was so pissed off by that. And then it just got worse. The reason I was so pissed off about this was because, you know, as I said, I just naturally assumed that, okay, they just brought James. I did not realise that, oh no, they had a choice and he got picked. Now, as I said, it just got worse. Okay, so now the queens have to write the name of the queen they want to have back on a mirror and then just so publicly, like, just... Even if COVID hadn't been a thing, and I know that's a bit silly because then it wouldn't have been happening at all, but just bear with me. Even if it hadn't, that would have been just unpleasant. Because, I mean, it's no secret that I didn't entirely, I mean, I never warmed to Estina because certainly the persona that they portrayed in the episodes we saw was one of just wall-to-wall arrogance, which annoyed me. And Cherry Valentine was one of those I really liked at first, because I just liked the looks and everything, but then she kind of came across as really bitchy. But then she did grow on me again a bit towards the end, but like, I wasn't 100% sold on her, you know? So, yeah, so I may not have been necessarily the biggest fans of these people, but I was just horrified at that. What they, and especially, so they were all voting, you know, like, I mean, my heart absolutely went out to Cherry Valentine. Did not get a single vote. So you've been brought back to just stand there and be publicly humiliated. That is horrible. I don't want to see that. This is supposed to be like television or something. And I know there are plenty of shows on television where they just humiliate people, so I'm assuming that some slightly sick people find that entertaining. I certainly bloody don't. And I know you could say, well, there's always a bit of an element with it being a competition and everything, and they get criticised at the end of it, but, yeah, but normally there's a point of, like, constructive criticism in it, and it's not necessarily just the idea of humiliating them. They say nice things about it as well. Do you know what I mean? That's supposed to be the kind of the idea of it. That's sort of like, no, we're not being horrible. It's just like, well, that someone has to be at the bottom, you know. Yeah, not in this episode, but normally. But, yeah, I mean, the whole idea of it, I just thought, oh, that is just... That's just me. It's so unfair. It's unfair on all the other queens to make them do that. Because, I mean, I know, I'd just be horrified. You have to... What? That's so unfair. You have to stand in front of someone and like... Because essentially, what you're saying is like, well, yeah, well, I don't want you to. No, it isn't. But that's what it feels like. So I just thought that whole thing was just... It would have been a mean thing to do if COVID hadn't been a thing. But bearing in mind that it was... Now, this is where it got really, really stupid. Because... Unless that whole thing was scripted, for all I know it might have been, they might have actually told everybody who to vote for. However, we'll assume that it wasn't. Because in that case, if you think about it, if they didn't know which of those queens was going to win, then they must all have gone through all the quarantine and everything, because although technically they were, I mean, I'm not sure they were really socially distanced from each other, but they certainly were from the other queens. But at the end, Jo wins, alright, okay, goes and joins the others. So, if you think about it, so they can't have come onto set unless they'd been in quarantining for 2 weeks. So basically, so what you're telling me is that you made those other two go through quarantine. You dragged Cherry away from her job as a nurse. Now, okay, she was anything like every other nurse in the country, she probably needed the break, but that's not the point. You dragged them away from that. You made them spend 2 weeks in a hotel room just to walk on set and get, 30 seconds of screen time of public humiliation. And at the end, it's alright because you gave them a gift bag. Yeah, and this is why I was cross, basically. And presumably they took the opportunity while they were there to film Cherry's confessional bits that went into the Queens in Lockdown. I wonder, because Sienna wasn't in that. So I wonder if... were they just in a sulk? I'm like, no, stop this, I'm going home. I don't know. I wouldn't blame them if they did. So yeah, as far as I was concerned, that just really got the whole thing off to a bad start. Because I was thinking that, okay, it was fine. Joe Black coming back sounded fun. Because I thought, well, we didn't see much of him, and as a bit of a sort of legendary performer. So that's a really nice thing. We get to see some more of it. But now, after watching that, I'm just thinking, ooh, it just left a really sour taste in my mouth. I'm watching that, I'm like, oh, that was so horrible that I just I don't want to watch this anymore. Like I'm so not enamoured with this episode already. So yeah, you may I was not enamoured with this whole start of it, but just to finish off on the subject of this opening, just by I just have to ask the question, what was RuPaul wearing on his head? I mean, was this meant to be some sort of tribute to Ginny Lemon? I mean, we said at the beginning, Ginny Lemon's not coming back because I don't like her. But seriously, what is that? I mean, for somebody who later on is going to have a mental breakdown over somebody's dress not being expensive enough, yeah, you have the temerity to walk out on national television in a wig that looks like you just picked it up in the pound shop and slapped it on your head as you were walking through the door. It's questionable. Anyway, we then hear that this week's Maxi Challenge is going to be, what was it, Revision or some nonsense? Eurovision, in other words. And I'm just thinking, oh dear. You see, the problem with this is that it really shows an inherent problem with the whole competition, which is, I've said before, as we all know, they are looking for a very, very particular kind of performer here, and one of the things they need to be able to do, they need to sing and dance, and it's that kind of performance, rather than a wider interpretation of performance. And I would much, much prefer it if they did allow that. So, for example, if you think back to Series 1, we had the girl group challenge. It was very much your sort of singing, dancing. I just think it would have been so much more fun if you'd have kind of allowed them to put their own spin on it. Give us a performance, entertain us, but we don't necessarily say how you're going to do that. Because they gave them a concept, if you like, of this girl group that had got together and was already splitting up, had decided to split up before their first tour was even finished. That was kind of the concept behind it, and you could have kind of played with that, and they didn't really. You know, because you could have had a bit more, you know, argy-bargy on stage. There was a little bit of it, but it was just kind of... But nonetheless, they did a creditable job of it now with that one, and I mean, we all know the Frock Destroyers will live long in the memory. They gave them something to work with. It was a pretty terrible song, but at least it was catchy, and they had them, you know, singing their little verses, and they did a good job of it. But with this one, we get the concept of Eurovision Song Contest. Now, that could potentially be really good. You could do that really well in this competition, but not the way that it's done, because it's all just... You've got to be able to sing and dance, that's all we're going to do. It's just a girl group challenge, that's all it is. And that's boring. You actually could have so much fun with this, because I think drag queens are the perfect people to do this. To do proper Eurovision. And I mean back in the days when it was Eurovision. When it used to be a treat. Every, you know, May, you'd settle in with a bottle of wine. Well, no, probably a case of wine to get through, actually. I mean, with your family and friends. I'm not suggesting you get it through on your own, or you might need it. And you watch hilarity that used to be Eurovision, and I'm talking back in the, what must it have been, the late 2000s, that kind of era, back when Eurovision was Eurovision, and it was a fantastic evening, it really was. And this was back in the days when, I mean, the countries that had, because they did still have a qualifying kind of system, I'm sure they did, because they also say about the countries that, you know, get a free pass into the final by virtue of paying for it, obviously could do what they liked, and my god, they did, and it set the tone. I mean, whether it was France having a bloke drive on stage in a golf buggy and start inhaling helium, or Spain have a lunatic in an Elvis wig playing a toy guitar, or that memorable year when Germany decided to do country and western, or the UK sort of going for the paedophile vote. That time we had the young ladies dressed up in school uniforms waving their legs over a desk. It was jaw-dropping. And all of the other countries just got into the swing of it. They did it properly. Now, I mean, you did always get the odd one or two every year who just didn't get it. They had some people come on rather earnestly, sing a terrible song and go off again. No. That's not how you do this. But I suppose it was the best they could do. But, no, most of the countries, they really, they got it. Like, this is what we want to see. Russian grannies coming on, baking some cookies, or people erupting out of pianos, and generally, the thing is that the measure of if it's a good it's a Eurovision entry, you should be watching it with a kind of expression the entire time. Okay, that's if, you know, by the end of the song you are not of the opinion that the performers are on the run from the mental health authorities in their own country, then it's not a good Eurovision entry. I think probably for me, I think the epitome of Eurovision was probably attained by Bosnia and Herzegovina in a year. It was 2000 something, I can't remember what year it was, but I'm sure you can get it on YouTube. And I can't remember what year it was, but I do remember, I remember word for word, Terry Wogan's introduction to it. He told us the name of the song. He said, oh, as close as I get to it anyway. It means experiment, and it certainly is on the experimental side. 4 knitting brides of Frankenstein, and a loony with a clothesline. And that is what it was. 4 Knitting Brides of Frankenstein, a loony with a clothesline, and then another loony exploded out of the washing basket. It was genius. And yes, you certainly were enthralled. Now, I'd like to say maybe it made more sense if you spoke Bosnian. I assume that's what language it was in. It could have been anything. But I seriously doubt it. I hope it didn't make any more sense, because that's not what Eurovision is about. No. That's what I want to see. Exploding bat wings. Lunatics with clotheslines. Yes, this is what we are looking for. These days, however, unfortunately, I haven't watched Eurovision for years, because whenever I've seen bits of it, there's maybe 1 or 2 entries where the performers look certifiable, but that's it. And that's not good enough. The point about it is that all of the songs are universally terrible. And, you know, generally they don't have perhaps the world's best singers performing them. They're not particularly... Yeah. So I mean, they're not something you want to listen to. The point about them is, therefore, now, if you look at them, from what I've seen of them, they're just bad. But they're not so bad, they're funny. What you had to do with them was you take this terrible song and you make it so terrible. So that you are oh my, what am I looking at here? And then it's fun. It's the difference between watching just a terrible film that you never want to see again and watching an Ed Wood movie, you know. That's what you have to do with it. Now, therefore, I just feel like, okay, in a competition, like the Drag Race, okay, you could really play on this. It could be fantastic if you basically imagine. So the way I see it is, you'd go to a like a panto costume hire thing or whatever. Like, I'm sure there's one in the BBC Wardrobe department. But do you know what I mean? Just bring in a massive load of like pantomime costumes. Bring in a load of daft theatrical props, all just totally unrelated, just any old rubbish, you know, like whatever. You give that to them and say, right, create a Eurovision entry. So you give them as a basis a terrible song. It needn't be the same terrible song, because it's getting a bit boring when they keep using the same song, because you have to listen to the same song twice. As long as it's terrible, yeah, by all means write your own verses for it, but I think they should have given them a choice as well. Don't make them all rap, because I hate rap songs. It just meant... Yeah, I automatically hated it. I know that's unfair, just because I don't like it, but it's just... Couldn't they have given them a choice? Some of them could have done it if they wanted to. And that way it could have given them an opportunity to that sort of... You know, you can sing it well if you want, or you can sing it terribly, and it doesn't really matter. But basically, yeah, just give them free rein, get all this stuff. I mean, these are people that are talented with makeup and costumes and whatever, so it would be the perfect thing to get them to do, but give them a load of junk as well, and say, right, create a Eurovision entry, pick a country, any country, or you can make one up, and just create a jaw-dropping Eurovision entry. And leave them to interpret that how they like. So, you know, if you wanted to, you could try and make one that was jaw-droppingly good. You could do. But that's not really Eurovision. So really, yeah, you want to make it terrible, but terrible in a way that you can't take your eyes off, you know? That would be so much fun to watch. I think these are the perfect people to do that. They could do it really well, because they've all got different performance skills. But instead you force them into a very narrow... And the problem with it was, as soon as they said this, I knew that, oh, they're going to make it like a modern Eurovision entry, aren't they? So it's just going to be a bunch of people singing a terrible song. That's it. And that's exactly what it was. And it was absolutely terrible. It was not, however, terrible enough that it was funny. We see a bit of them sort of preparing this, and we get this bit obviously dropped in for the edit. Like, oh, well, I've got this dress, but it's super basic. Yeah, right, okay, we wear that, I mean, why? I don't know, but, yeah. It seemed a little odd. I was like, well, were there not other dresses available or something? Or could you not have borrowed one from somebody? I mean, I don't know, because But that, I mean, we'll get on to why that whole thing is grossly unfair, but, you know. But anyway, so we then see this, with a bit of them rehearsing and doing this choreography, and we've got to dumb it down for some bit, right, okay. Moving on to the performance, I mean, we first see this, you know, bunch walk. Their costumes were nice, they'd made a bit of, there was a certain coordination going on there, and then they did this performance, and I thought they did a very good job with it, but at the same time, I'm just watching it like, yeah, right. And most of that was because the song was so terrible. You needed to make a joke out of how bad it was, and it wasn't. It was like, I'm not getting the joke here, guys, this is just terrible. And also I found that there was like they got this horrible plastic stool on stage and then just kind of left it in the corner, and I found that so distracting. After they threw it, I was sort of, what is the stool made of? And as soon as I saw it, I thought, well, I'm assuming Bimini's going to do something with it, because we've seen this before. We've seen it in lockdown. She's been doing a lot of chair exercises, and we know it's very impressive. We've seen really things she can do. So I'm assuming she's going to. No, she still doesn't. No, that stool's still there. And I'm just looking at this bloody stool after. I think, is it going to do something at some point? It's just there. Finally, she picks it up and starts waving her leg about, and I'm like, oh, is that it? And I was sort of. It just felt like a bit of an anticlimax. Like, oh, what? Oh, no, we're sort of leaning over it or something. Whatever. Then the next thing, she's climbing up on it. I'm thinking, what? What are you doing? She then leaps off it into the bed. Okay, that was amazing. Wow. Okay, that. Hats off to you. That was brilliant. But it just felt like a bit of a very long build up to this. Oh, isn't this good? Yeah, it was, yeah. But to me, I know a lot of, I mean, I heard afterwards, I was people were commenting on things like, oh, it was such a good performance. I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's just me then, but to me, looking at it, I thought it looked exactly like a bunch of very talented performing queens who'd not been able to work for the past 7 months. And I thought it looked like it. Now, that's not meant to be a criticism of them, because obviously they have. That is what's happened. So, considering that, they did a damn good job. And I thought it, then when we saw it a second time, obviously, without the redeeming feature of the amazing splits at the end, it was even more lacklustre. But I just wasn't really enamoured with either of them. And the thing about it was that presumably this challenge was like slated in for this episode, episode 5, from the beginning of the running, and I just wondered whether could they have jigged things around a little bit under the circumstances, rather than when they get back, give them a performance where they had to do all themselves. Like, they had to write their own verses, they had to do all the choreography themselves, they had to do all the costumes and everything, and I just felt like, okay, couldn't you maybe have eased them back into it? But when they've been through a really rough time, all things considered, and maybe you could have done something a bit more like next week. They seem to be doing a sort of design challenge out of rubbish, something. But maybe something like that where you're giving them a bit more of a, rather than just, right, go off, do it all yourself. Normally, yeah, okay, that would have been fine, but I just felt in the circumstances maybe it would have been a little bit fairer. I don't know. Nonetheless, I thought they did a good job under the circumstances. But yeah, I just felt, I mean, by the end of that second going through the song, I've heard this song twice, and I still didn't remember a word of it, because it was just so bad. It was just like going in one ear out the other. Kind of wasn't stopping in my brain, because there was nothing there to stop. And I just felt like, because it was so bad, you could have done something with it. You could have made it a laugh. And I felt like some of them were trying, like, I got the impression, like, Tia Coffee, unsurprisingly, was trying to do that. Maybe Lawrence Cheney was a little bit as well. The kind of comedy queens, but you expected them to do more of it, and it was almost like, well, they felt they couldn't, within the constraints of the challenge. No, you're supposed to be doing this properly. Yeah. No, if you're going to go terrible, go really terrible. Because otherwise it's just bad. Yeah. So it was kind of thing like, yeah, I do not want to watch this again, thanks. I've seen quite enough. So we then, obviously we get onto the runway and we get a day at the seaside and we finally understand the comments. In an interview that Joe Black did after his elimination, and they were talking about the infamous Brighton Pavilion look, and referring to Graham Norton's comment about, oh, it looked like this was like Act's second or third or fourth or whatever idea, and should have stuck with the first one. So they asked, well, actually, was that your first idea? And he actually said, well, I did have one other idea, but I won't tell you what it is because you'll be seeing it on Instagram. Yes. So he said, well, obviously, no, actually, you're going to see it in the show, but couldn't say that. But, and when you see it, you'll go, oh, yes, it was that one. Well, of course. So after this one, yes, he then clarified that. Well, of course, even before they were told the themes, it figured, because based on Series 1, there's going to be a hometown look. Okay, so he started coming out with that one. But it then, of course, was told one of the looks was, in fact, a day at the seaside. When you think about it, it's a little bit unfair. Because, yeah, so if you live in Brighton, you've got a bit... problem. Because that's your seaside. I mean, same thing. Yeah. So anyway, yes, when you saw it, yes, I see what you mean. Yes, that was the alternative Brighton look. But yeah. Anyway, I mean, we get these looks, and I thought they were all, you know, really inventive, really creative. Some were better executed than others, of course. But I did like the way nobody just sort of tried to come out in a bathing costume or something. I mean, you wouldn't generally do so at the seaside in Britain, but there was a sort of, you know, there could have been a very easy kind of cop-out route with this, and nobody went that, and everyone tried to be creative with it, which I really, really liked, and I thought it was very good. Generally speaking, obviously we got Bimini's, you know, interesting take on a sort of Victorian walk along the promenade, which was very nice. It was very attractive, very well turned out. There you are. Then what order did we get them in? Was it Taste or Horror next? Well, anyway, I don't know. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Yes, we had Taste coming out in a netting. Was it sand-coloured netting with all sorts of the seashells and the starfish? That was amazing. A bag of chips was brilliant. It was very, very good, because I felt with some of it, she's always been like, oh no, I'm always giving you fashion. It always has to look gorgeous, which is fine. But sometimes I feel like, I know you can go too costumey, but sometimes I feel like she's afraid to go anywhere near costume. And sometimes that can hinder your creativity a bit. But I felt like this was really, really good. It was a costume, but done as fashion, and it really, really worked. Of course, when Sister then came out, I can't wait, because obviously I don't know what was going on there. I mean, who knows whether she copied it or she didn't. I mean, we can't say, can we, as outsiders? But I did love the touch of the seagull, though. That was on Sister's one. It was stupid and therefore hilarious, because as anyone who's ever tried to eat chips on Seaside knows, it's exactly what happens is a seagull comes down and pinches your bloody chips. So the seagull did make me laugh, but yeah, basically it was a weird choice, because it was good because it was creative, but because we'd already seen a horror do it, it wasn't creative anymore, and therefore it really showed up how it was nothing as good as a horror's version of the same thing. But hey, obviously we get, what else did we have? Lawrence Chaney's one was a bit, it was very well done, of course, it was perfectly, you know, turned out, and it was creative. I just felt like, I was surprised it wasn't more so, just considering some of the other ones that we've seen, because compared to some of the more, you know, the sort of the, well, bag of chips kind of stood out, and some of the just seemed a little bit plain compared to some of them, but it was very good. You know, it was a very solid showing. And obviously we had Tia Coffee, bless her, as the thing is, when she first came out in that, I actually really liked it. I was like, oh look, she's a little ice cream cone. Because she'd been going on about how I'm going to step it up and whatever, and I did think she had. We'd got more creative with makeup. We had the big glittery cherry, and she had put rhinestones and things on the thing. Yeah, the more you looked at it, the more you thought, yeah, it's not... Yeah, I mean, it could have been maybe improved. Maybe we could have had the skirt cut into an ice... Maybe the top was a little bit weird. Because when she first came out, I was like, oh, it's an ice cream cone. Actually, the more I found I was looking at it, the more I was like, yeah, maybe we could have done a little bit more, because it's just kind of a puffy sort of white thing. Could we have maybe done a kind of swirly that looked actually like an ice cream? It could have been a little bit more. But I didn't really like the way what the judges criticised were, oh, we can't see your waist. We want to have this... Oh, for God's sake, stop going on about that. Who cares what shape she's meant to be? She's meant to be an ice cream cone, so she should be the shape of an ice cream cone, and they don't have a waist. So, I don't give a monkeys whether you can see her waist or not. It's the actual overall creativity of the costume for that. That's what I want to see, and I agree. It wasn't perfect, but I thought it was getting there. Who else do we have? Ellie Diamond's seagull. I do not know what to, I mean, it was amazing, and I think for the sake of it, what? Okay, well, pass. You can, yeah, just. I could understand the kind of, yes, you're safe. Please get off the stage. It was slightly disturbing, the seagull in the bikini. I did love the heels, but with the little webs. It did make me laugh. But yeah, it was strange, shall we say. It was strange. But it was undeniably creative, so we'll give her that. But yes, then we get Joe Black and the amazing Windswept. Wow. I mean, this one for me was totally the winning outfit. Like, I was just, wow, okay. There were some fantastic ones and there were some really, really good ones, but I just thought, nah. No, that just takes the cake. But I don't know. We then obviously we get onto this bizarre judging, and I mean, obviously anything else that anybody said has quite gone out of my head, so apologies for that, because I think we all know the one thing that everyone remembers from it was the grossly unprofessional outburst. You know, and it really did expose one of the problems, because I mean, it always is a problem. You know, you've got sitting in judgment over everybody, saying, you know, basically saying, well, don't I look gorgeous? Don't you wish you looked as gorgeous as me? When I didn't do this, I had a team of people working on me to make me look like this. Now, you know, there is something slightly questionable about that. To then blatantly actually state it, whilst, you know, criticising someone for not spending enough money when they've been out of work for the past 7 months, and they don't all have, you know, the sort of billionaire income that, you know, some people might have. They write songs about how they make money in their sleep. Well, I'm sure you do, love. Perhaps you'd like to share it out with some of these queens then, and you could shut up. Because, yeah, I mean, I just thought it was an awful thing to say, and I know they did apologise later. Oh well, I'm sorry, I've been in lockdown. Oh really? How terrible for you? Because of course nobody else has, have they? And other people, you know, were maybe a bit worse off in it. I mean, you heard about Lady Diamond, you know, becoming homeless during lockdown and being out of work for all of that time. Joe Black in an interview actually talked about how, to make ends meet, he'd actually sold off most of the costumes they would have used for later in the series and had to try and buy them back in order to come onto the show. Now, you know, RuPaul not aware of that? Well, I don't know. The point is, what sets apart sort of consummate professionals from the rest of us is that they don't let things like that get to them. They still behave in an exemplary professional manner, even when they've been through hard circumstances. So I really don't think saying, oh, well, you know, it's been through lockdown, is an excuse. No. You don't go out and rant at people for not spending enough money. And you certainly don't when you're a millionaire and you're talking to people who have been out of work for the past 7 months and didn't have that much money to start with, in many cases. So, you know, it's just not appropriate how much to use. And it made a mockery of the whole thing, really, because we then ended up with this silly situation where, like, oh, well, okay, so Joe Black's going to be put in the bottom simply because I didn't like the dress she came out in that performance. It felt like, I mean, as I say, I've forgotten what everybody else said, so maybe the performance was mentioned, but my recollection was it was really glossed over. It was all about what Joe Black was wearing, which is a bit odd, because as far as I could see, they were all wearing just natty little pink dresses. Tia Kofi looked like she'd made an effort to look like some kind of 90s pop star, but then none of the others matched. Ellie Diamond was just wearing a totally plain sort of pink blousey thing, and Sister was the other one in that one, like a sort of pink gingham outfit that I don't know. Like, I don't know where it was going. I don't know where we were going with that. So they were all just wearing natty little pink dresses, and why'd you pick on that? And we just ignore the fact that, okay, so you're picking on them for their outfit, but what about the performance? I didn't think Joe Black's performance was any worse than anybody else's. Certainly not in that group. And you don't make any mention of the fact that it probably had the best outfit on the runways. Whereas Tia Kofi, you're going to put in the bottom because you don't like her outfit in the runway, but I thought she was the best in the performance. So where are we going with this? It just seemed hopelessly vague. Just like, I don't like these two because they're more kind of comedy queens than the singing, dancing type, so I need to get rid of them, so I'm going to put them in the bottom. And that's just what it felt like, and it was all a bit, yeah, whatever. Those ivy berries are certainly proving popular. The Pidgey trying to get them. He's trying to copy the Red Wings. Go on, you can do it! The Red Wings are a bit lighter. Rather more manoeuvrable. That's what they're after.